You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in beautiful Northport, Florida. I was out on the road today, and I will tell you, it felt a little light out there today. I think a lot more people went north. So, really, still slow down, take your time. There's really no reason to rush and get yourself in a situation you can't get out of, or put someone else in harm's way and cause them to have some grief along the way. Let's keep everybody safe, calm, cool, and collected. Get home safe and protect everybody else around you. If people would just learn how to drive a little slower, I think the world would be a better place. I'm all about 80. I get it. 80 on 75, but that 110 on 75, that's just an accident waiting to happen. And really, I saw a few trucks this weekend that I'd have loved to have been able to pull them over myself. But people just need to slow down and have some respect for each other. So keep that in mind as you're driving home tonight. Show a little respect and get home safe. But I've got a very special guest in the house today, Billy Carlson. So what's happening at Public Works?
Well, once again, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to come on and talk about all things Public Works. So we've had quite a bit. We had pretty busy month in March. We had a couple job fairs. Solid Waste Job Fair, Public Works Job Fair was this past weekend. Solid Waste filled a lot of vacancies. I know the Solid Waste specific job fair, I believe they hired 6 drivers and solid waste assistant. And then they hired another couple drivers this past weekend during the Public Works job fair. So they've been a little short-handed. Had some supervisors on trucks to fill the gaps. And I think we're getting a little bit closer to normal staffing there, which is always good. Always helps to be, to have all of our personnel back and filling in. So we'll have a couple of weeks here where we got to get guys trained up, and then hopefully collection picks up, business as usual.
Right.
We also had March 12th, Saturday, same day as the Solid Waste Job Fair. Frank Lama, Solid Waste Manager, had a very busy day that day. That morning was the annual Household Hazardous Waste event. We saw in little over 3 hours, we had something like 600 plus vehicles that they took material from. So it was very busy. Anybody who happened to stop by could tell you it was extremely busy. We had both roundabouts around City Hall just packed with vehicles. And unfortunately, lightning caused emergency personnel to close up shop. Weather's one of those things that we don't necessarily have control of. And I guess our guys were out ready to work in the rain, but as soon as the lightning came around and the lightning alarm over by the football fields went off, they were told, hey, we got to shut this thing down. So being that we still had some people that were disappointed, in the wait time, and it's not that they weren't, moving things pretty quickly. It's just that there was just sheer volume. There's no way to keep that number of vehicles moving in a way that's going to make everybody happy. But in addition, we had people that were in line and lightning canceled things. And so we weren't able to get to them. So we went to the county and said, hey, we had a lot of vehicles and we still had a lot more that weren't able to drop their stuff off. What can we do? So it's been quite a while since we've had 2 in 1 year, but coming up on Saturday, June 4th, that's about, I believe, 9 or 10 weeks from now. We are having another collection event. This one is going to be at the Public Works Yard. And hopefully we've got a traffic plan that will keep things moving fairly fluidly and expediently. And we hope to get, some of the people that we weren't able to get to at the last one, as well as some of the people we were, and maybe they just have more.
Is that listed on the website anywhere?
I don't believe we have that up yet on the website. We just got confirmation kind of at the end of the week last week.
That's fantastic.
We have put it up on social media, Facebook, Twitter. I believe Instagram, but I'm not 100% certain. But yes, we'll have the website updated and include that, have it on the calendar and everything like that coming up forward. But that is like hot off the presses. Just at the end of last week, we got it confirmed. So we do have it coming up, and we've had people ask about doing 2 a year. And I guess the last time that we had 2 in the same year, the second event didn't have nearly the turnout that they had hoped, and personnel wise, and you know, coordinating all of that effort takes a lot of manpower and money, and they had deemed that it just wasn't worth it at the time to have 2 collection events. But we clearly saw, a couple of weeks ago that there's definitely a need, and so we worked pretty quickly with the county. I mean, he sent an email that afternoon and said, "Hey, this didn't work out great. We still had a lot of people we weren't able to get to. We had 600 cars that we did get to. We still have a lot of desire for hazardous waste collection. How can we make this happen?" So
Fantastic. And I know that you're going to, when is that? About 6 weeks out?
that is June 4th. So I believe we're about 9 or 10 weeks out.
Okay. So you'll definitely be back on the show and we can really promote it again then. And I'm sure
Absolutely.
it'll be on the website and also probably on Facebook at that point too.
Yes. So we threw up the flyer towards the end, I think Friday afternoon, maybe, when we got word that the county was going to, work with us on that date. And so we've got that up, and obviously we'll remind people. We'll send the occasional reminders over the next couple months over social media, and we'll have it up on the website, on the calendar. And then of course we'll remind you guys on the show here, end of next month, end of May. And at the end of May, we'll be a week or 2 out. So
That's awesome. And you said you served 600, right?
Yes, 600 plus vehicles. I want to say it was either a little over 600 or just a smidge under 600.
That's fantastic. And you had the job fair along with that, and you said that was a very huge success too, right?
Yes, and so that was kind of the first time we've attempted that. Solid Waste has had a lot of vacancies and truck operator positions, and we've had supervisors probably since January, maybe December, that have been filling in on trucks, filling in on routes, to make sure we don't have a drop off in service. Frank himself has been on the truck a couple times to make sure that everything's getting collected as it should be. And obviously that puts kind of a strain on everybody. So they said, the conventional hiring process isn't working right now. What can we do to, fix that? So they said, I believe it was the county, they said had a job fair they drew rave reviews. And so they thought, well, let's think outside the box a little bit here and see what we can do. So they put together the job fair for solid waste, and it seemed to be successful. Frank got, I believe, like I said, 6 drivers and a solid waste assistant out of that weekend, and we had a couple more spots open up since then, and I believe he was able to fill those this past weekend too.
Fantastic. You got just with the shorthandedness that causes a lot of issues within public works, because you guys are really designed to serve the community more than anything, and when you're shorthanded, you're kind of shuffling things around, aren't you?
I mean, they're kind of piecing it together. When you're talking about, we've got to move yard waste guys to garbage trucks or recycling trucks, and then the supervisors are jumping on bulk trucks, and Frank was putting in work with one of the yard waste guys to help get yard waste collected and things like that. And so when you're talking about they're doing that, well, then they're not doing their normal duties, and on top of that, then they've got to pull extra work to make sure they get those done at some point, because you still got to function like normal. So we've had a lot of guys pulling a lot of extra work and pulling extra weight and just making sure we can get what we need done.
And are we at the point now where we're looking at canals, and because we're getting into rainy season, I know that we've often talked about debris and clearing things out. Are we kind of scanning the canals now to make sure that we don't have any debris that prior to a heavy rain may get shifted down to one of the lift stations?
Absolutely, absolutely. So they still, they still, I don't want to say patrol, but they still keep an eye on the city's waterways and right of ways, and make sure that we're working to keep those clear and mowed short, trimmed short, and everything. Make sure everything is able to function. So God forbid next week we get some unforeseen thunderstorm that brings a foot of rain. We're not caught with our pants down, and we've got the waterways ready to go.
I learned something really cool from talking with the Aquatic Center. They've been taking in second graders to the Aquatic Center to introduce them to swimming, and
Okay.
and I know it has that has nothing to do with public works, but in a sense it does, because they're talking about the correlation between water awareness and even our canals. We're at like 80 miles of canals, right?
Right.
And so, I put these two things together. You guys are keeping our canals clean. That's also part of our drinking water. So you're making sure that people are educated when they live on the water. Don't dump anything in there, because you're going to end up getting that back at some point.
Right.
And you're trying to keep people on task, but at the same time, we've got another department in the Aquatic Center, Parks and Rec, that are actually educating the youth on water safety, on being in the canal, because there are kids that go into the canal, and just having them aware of what's going on there. We're kind of unique, and the reason I'm bringing that in is we're unique in the fact that we have 80 miles of canals. We've got two different departments that are kind of doing public service awareness type situations,
Right.
To get the word out. And it's not really about safety and about community education, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I bring them into the fold because I was overly impressed, because I didn't know that we had that program. And, a lot of people who are watching the show for the first time, they're probably going to wonder, what do you guys do to the canals? What are you actually doing to make our canal system better?
So, I mean, like we talked about last month, there's vegetative control where they spray the canals to make sure that we don't get weed overgrowth and things like that. And part of that is, it helps the waterways move like necessary. But, if you have less vegetation, there are less ways for waste and things like that to get caught up and get stuck in the water and things like that. We can maintain that. While they're out on the water, if they see stuff, take stuff out of the water. Things on the shores, and this is something that we occasionally get through the North Report app. We get reports on, hey, I saw this is sitting out here at the edge of the water. Can you please come take that? And, we come to get debris out of the water or off the water's edge to hopefully keep it out of, the waterways, and primarily also to keep it off our water control structures, because, we use those to regulate the flow of water. And, God forbid, we don't want things getting tangled with the machinery involved and things like that, that would cause us to not be able to regulate the flow like we need to.
Do we have any new structures going in this year?
We have, it's actually water control structure 108. And off the top of my head, it's off of Hillsborough. And I'm struggling to come up with the cross street off the top of my head. But they were, on Friday, I believe, they were pouring the last cement pour. So that water structure is coming along fairly well.
Is that going to be another Bluetooth capable water structure?
I believe so, yes. And the idea there is obviously having the technology there means it's easier for us to oversee the structures and uh, make changes as necessary. When we had the uh, network issues that we had back in January, they actually had to turn off all the networking on all the devices, and they all had to go by hand, which obviously is a more painstakingly long process
Right.
than pulling up their iPad and, okay, I need to move this, I need to move that, I need to move that. So,
Can you talk a little bit about the structures and how they actually work and why they're designed the way they are?
so the water control structures that I have had the pleasure of seeing in person and watching in operation essentially regulate the flow of water. And during rainy season, it's pretty easy to just say, okay, open them up and let the water flow out to the Mayaca River. Especially after Elsa. Well, what's the thought process there? Obviously, everything goes open. We let everything flow out as quick as it's able to, and we just try to keep the structures clear of debris. Last year, we had somebody's small, like personal boat, little motorboat, got blown off from wherever they had parked it and ended up in the water structure. And they ended up having to have crew people pull that out, take it out, so that it wasn't blocking the structures from opening and closing. Um, but during the off season, it gets a little harder to navigate when you're talking about we don't get rain for weeks at a time, months at a time. Obviously, the water levels go down, and so in talking to our one operations person who I had stopped at a couple of the structures with for a news bite around Tropical Storm Fred. He said there's a balance to where you want to keep some water because obviously people expect water in our waterways and they want to fish and they want to do this and they want to do that and you don't want it bone dry. Um, but you obviously don't want to keep things closed year round and stop the flow because when you stop the flow of water, that's when you get buildup. That's when you get weeds and all kind of algae buildup and all kind of things like that. So there's a delicate balance to keeping enough water in the waterway, but also keeping the water flowing.
Do we do different tests along the way, like in the summertime and then the rainy season? I mean, we've got some dry, really, like you said, we've got some really dry periods of time. Do we do any type of water testing to see if there's different kind of contaminants within the water each kind of quarter or anything like that?
That would probably be a good question for Elizabeth Wong, who is our stormwater manager. I know she's been kind of heading up some of the water testing that I believe has been surrounding the city sewer and water push as far as getting people off of septic and putting them onto the city water. So she would probably be able to give you a better idea as far as what testing we do, how often we do it. Do we do it in different seasons? We're testing for different things, and how all that goes.
And I know we've got a few things in the works, but that would be another good topic to have. I know that people are there's always a group of people out there that are concerned, but I think that educating people on what there is and why you don't do certain things is always a good idea. I'd
Right.
like to have Elizabeth back on. Huh, got to put my teeth back in. Didn't get that out. But I would love to have her back on. I think it's been probably about 2 years since I had her on. I think it was pre-COVID, actually.
Okay.
And it's been a little tougher to kind of get these shows back into play because we did a lot of the 1 year we did a whole lot of remote, and thanks to WKDW and Marie, we've got now StreamYard, which we can do multiple locations, which I think is going to be a great thing. But the contaminants that are in the water, do you know if there's more contaminants, or do you have a list of contaminants that we are aware of now?
As far as active, I don't have anything on hand personally. I don't have anything that they've tapped into to tell me, hey, let's go public and ask people to watch for these things. I think the regular occurrences, fertilizer obviously is banned during rainy season, so we don't get the nitrates and things like that from that into the waterways. Pet waste is obviously a common one. And the big thing with pet waste, we had the big Scoop the Poop campaign last year, and it worked. A lot more people were picking up their dog poop. The drawback to that was a lot more people were then flushing the dog poop in the bags down their toilets, which is obviously not great for the water system. And so that kind of jams things up at the wastewater plant, and it clogs pipes, breaks things down. So
I'd never in a million years would have thought people would bag it and then take it inside and flush it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that for a second, because I think I'm just shocked that was the solution to scoop the poop. The real solution is bag it and put it in your trash can, right?
Right. So if you take it, bag it, stick it in your trash can gets emptied in the garbage truck brings it up to the landfill. Landfill already stinks, let them deal with it.
Right.
But it became a pretty big problem, I want to say over the winter, and this may have been when the snowbirds started coming back. I'm not sure. I'm not blaming anybody, but I know it kind of came to a head in December where we were like, hey, we have a lot of people flushing these dog poop bags. And I think part of the problem is people don't want to put it in their trash can, and then their trash can stinks. I'm not really sure. Our trash cans are on the side of the house, so I don't think twice about it. We pick up after our dogs. I put it in the trash can. We get the unscented bags, so they lock in the odor in the bag, and you don't have to deal with it. But I'm also not standing at my trash can wafting the scent into my nose to see how it's going. So I think that's part of it.
If you're going to do that, then empty the bag and put the bag in the trash can.
Exactly. So if that's your concern and you want to flush it, right, just dump the poop in the toilet. That's what the system is designed for. But please don't put the bags down the toilet. And that, right. I mean, people on septic already know that.
Right.
Right. If you're flushing bags and stuff in your septic, you're flushing wipes. Even the flushable wipes are not really flushable. They don't break down. So if you're on septic, you know these things, because if you're doing this, it's going to back up your system and cause a major problem.
Right. So do we have solutions in place for stuff like that, or do we just deal with it as it occurs?
As far as I know, we have to kind of deal with it as it occurs.
So I'm going to go back, because Bill English is wanting to know, and I just put it up there, what are the primary contaminants within our canals and waterways? And are we consistently testing for those?
My assumption is yes. I know Elizabeth does extensive work on the waterways, and part of her duties are to educate people on the contaminants and how we can avoid them. She works endlessly. I mean, if you talk to Elizabeth, start a conversation with her, she will talk to you for an hour on everything involved with the waterways, contaminants, flooding, everything. You could have a very long conversation with Elizabeth on the city's waterways. She would be able to give you better information as far as what are the leading contaminants and how often they're testing for them. I don't have that information on hand, but I will talk to Elizabeth and see if maybe we can get her on next month, and we could talk about that kind of stuff in depth, because that's definitely more under her purview for sure.
And I'm going to go back to Bill here for a second, or and just check in with him. And will you give me a response, Bill? Is that something that you would be encouraged to watch? Is to get Elizabeth on the show and talk more in depth about the contaminants and what we're doing and how we're addressing things. Just give me a quick response and I'll post that. But if you've got questions out there, one of the things Chuck is a great fan. He posts questions, he posts comments. Here's the beauty: it's good, bad, and the ugly. We're trying to talk about everything. We're trying to educate people on everything, and Chuck does a really good job of participating in the show. So if you're listening on WKDW Radio, you can always go to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and look up Real Talk Radio 97.5 FM and KDW Radio. We have all this streaming live on the internet so that people can participate. You can get answers. You can share the video, because there is valuable information. If you share this with your neighbors may be flushing bags of dog crap down the toilet. There's just some things you got to know, because at the end of the day, and I'll ask this question: if there are repairs, if there are breakdowns, doesn't that affect our balance sheet? Because we're now adding repairs and everything else. So it's tax dollars, your tax dollars at work, because you're not doing the right things, right?
Correct. So that money has to come from a budget somewhere, which eventually comes up, out of taxes and all the things of that nature. But yes, I know I've seen in comment threads on Facebook, and it's unfortunate that some people think, well, we're going to end up paying for it anyway, so whatever, I'll just do what I want. I pay taxes. That's going to result in you paying more taxes, and I don't understand why you would want to go that route, I guess is my thinking.
Yeah, and so we've got the canal systems all working together. We've got really everybody trying to educate on what not to do with fertilizers. Fertilizer is a major problem, it's probably one of our biggest problems in rainy season is the runoff. And it's bad enough that we have the oil runoff of the roads and everything else that we're also getting too. But when you start thinking about the list of things that are getting into our water, the land itself has a filtering system.
Right.
Do we do soil samples and check canal? I want to actually say a health safety check for the canals.
Again, that's Elizabeth might be able to give you more information on that as far as the canals. I know as far as the swales go, that's part of the reason we encourage people to give their yards time. When it rains, we tell people you got 3 days, 72 hours for it to filter. And it's for that exact reason, because, the ground itself causes natural filter for these kind of things. And we would like to keep that in place as much as we can, rather than just rush it all into the waterways.
All right. So we've got, we kind of slid into some swell situation. So I'm going to talk about that for a second, because once again, we're coming into the rainy season. And, I think it's good to talk about the swells. And if you're having a problem holding water, it's the 3-day, 72-hour rule, right?
Yes.
And so if you're holding water for 72 hours, then you want to get a hold of Public Works. It needs to be 72 hours, not 24, not 48 hours. But give them a call, let them know that you're dealing with an issue. And you guys do actually come out and trench the swells out and help with the runoff, correct?
Yes. So how the process goes at this point is, let's say it rains tonight, overnight, and you're holding water tomorrow, which is probably going to be a given, depending on how much rain we got. If it's Elsa levels, you're guaranteed you're going to be holding water because that was 12 inches in a matter of like 2 hours. So you're holding water tomorrow. Then you go to work Wednesday morning, come home, you see you're still holding water. Thursday, you come home from work, still holding water. Give us a call, or even Thursday morning if you're still holding water. Give us a call, Public Works, 941-240-8050, or pull up North Report and file a request that way. And let us know, hey, we've been holding water for a few days. Can we have somebody look at it? So one of our planners or inspectors will come out, take a look at the lay of the land, see if there are high points or low points for whatever reason in your swale. If you had a friend over and he parked in your front yard and you got a tire rut that's causing all the water to hold up there, they'll let you know. If they'll check under the driveway, if you've got the culvert running under the driveway, check for any blockages there. Anything that they can find, any reason. Maybe it's a neighbor 2 houses down, there's a problem with their swale, and so that's causing the flow of water to not move as it should. And if they find the need for your swale, your neighbor's swale, maybe a whole stretch of homes on the street, because again, maybe there's a neighbor 3 or 4 houses down that's causing an issue, they will add you to the list to be what they call regraded. And then sometimes it can be 2 weeks, sometimes it can be 8 weeks. It just depends on how many people are on the list at that point. And it's essentially first come, first serve. So if you got added to the list first, you're going to be first. And I will say, when they come through, when they're there, it's quick. We had our street was done, I want to say in September or October last year. And I saw them in the morning when I left for work, and I came home at lunch and they were almost done. And so, they were in and out, had it all scooped out, everything. And then they order the sod. And then again, I left for work, saw all the pallets of sod down the street waiting to be used. I figured, well, when I come home for lunch, they're probably still going to be here. I'll take some pictures, have some good stock photos. And they were done, gone. Laid all the sod, they were already out. So they do move pretty quick once they get to your area. And, if there's blockages or things like that in the culvert under your driveway, they'll let you know. If it's a problem with the culvert itself, which does happen, I know for us, we had an aluminum pipe underneath and it had rusted out and was letting dirt in, and that was not helping things. The culvert itself will be the resident's responsibility, but if there's a blockage that we can blow out, they'll blow it out for you.
So I want to go in and we've talked about multiple things at this point, but the public water that we have now, we're talking about our canals, the health of our canals, how we control the waterway. What's our breakdown of, just real quick, what's our breakdown of mixture of water? Where do we get our water sources from? And tell people where that all happens.
So, the bulk of the water that we get is from the Big Slough, which is the swampland. It's the official name, I guess, of the swampland above us. Carlson Preserve is a big stretch of that. So when it rains north of us, it all comes back this way. The Myakka River, I believe some of that may filter our way, but typically most of our stuff kind of makes its way through our city's waterways to the Myakka River where it crosses River Road. And so I believe that's the bulk of where our water comes from, running through the city's waterways. I know when we saw Tropical Storm Elsa and all the flooding thereafter, it was because all that swampland north of us got the water, came back through Northport, and kind of flooded the city's waterways with really more water than we were prepared to handle. And to be fair, I don't know that there are many waterways short of like the Mississippi River that are really prepared to handle as much water as came our way. I don't know that it was
happen every year.
exactly. So I think the last time I saw it was Hurricane Irma, and essentially what that was all the water down here got swept out and all went up north, and then at some point it all came back south. And again, Northport is this community that is wedged between this Big Slough Canal and the Charlotte Harbor, essentially. And the water's got to make its way out somewhere, and we're kind of in that squish of land in between.
Right. And we also use the Peace River Water Authority, right?
Maybe. I'm not 100% up on the Peace River and the Water Authority there, but like we said there at the Myakkahatchee Creek, that's basically the outlet into Northport from the Big Slough. The Myakkahatchee Creek connects with the Big Slough Canal, which is the one that kind of runs through the middle of Northport.
Right.
And so all that water essentially makes its way all the way through out to, again, the Myakka River, in the Charlotte Harbor and all that area south of us.
So I want to talk a little bit about water treatment plants, because we now have two, correct?
I believe so. I believe they were putting one up in Welland Park.
Yep, I believe it's done. So we've got two going. The water capacity that we're talking about, if we went citywide, is crazy large. I know we're not exactly 100% ready for that right now, and I know that we're not going to have that conversation, because we're talking probably billions of dollars to get everything piped in for sewer and water and everything else, let alone millions. But there is talk right now of sections of sewer and city water going in, and that's really going to help, in a sense, eliminate some contamination that we have from septic tanks. We have this distinct problem with septic tanks that we don't like to replace them when they're bad,
right?
Because when you have a septic tank and you have a well, it's free water and free sewer. And
exactly.
I keep forgetting to remind people that neither one are free, because you're your own public works department. You're supposed to have these things checked. You're supposed to have these things looked at and make sure that they're maintained and running properly. If they're not, what ends up happening is the septic tank goes bad, and you end up with maybe a hole in the side, and you're dealing with contaminations into the ground. And what can you explain what is below us, so that people who I'm trying to make this mental picture for people that just because your septic tank is only one that's bad, you're not by yourself.
Right.
And they're finding this out in Charlotte County, and Charlotte County now has, I think it's every 4 years that they have to get certified. And I think we should go to that. I 100% believe in that policy. That's one thing I would like to see our city council do, is to come up with something creative there to make sure. And this is really environmentally friendly stuff. And that our septic tanks are at least certified every 4 years, which that's in the lifetime of a septic tank. It's 5 times.
Sure.
5 times in 20 years, because your estimated life expectancy is 20 years. We really don't have a policy like that here. They do in Charlotte County, and the companies actually have to go out. They have to look at these things. They have to certify it, and if it's bad, they actually turn it into the health department. And I think that kind of triggers some things to take place much quicker. But do we see in the near future, with what we're doing, are we adapting to the focus of the future? Are we setting up the water systems to be adapted to get larger, and as these things are being projected out? I know we're talking massive dollar expense, even one section at a time, to convert over to sewer and water. But are we looking at those things now and trying to adapt as a department within the city? Are we adapting to those things now?
Well, I think
Planning?
the big uproar you saw last summer was when they came out and said, hey, eventually everybody's going to be on city sewer and water, and everybody sees the cost. Everybody sees that, you're talking $30,000 a home. And I think the reason they're doing this is, like you said, it's to plan along for the future and get the waterways, the water system set up. So in the future, we have less septic issues, and I think people are kind of, they don't want to be told what they have to do. I think that's part of it. I have a septic on my home, and obviously $30,000 is a lot to look at when you're talking about, we bought our home for $100,000, and obviously property values and everything have gone up. But when you're telling somebody, well, you paid $100,000 for your home, and now you're looking at a $30,000 bill, well, where's that money supposed to come from? But I think part of that too, and I believe they've said this several times when they announced the plan to go, move towards this. A lot of it is they've got to have a plan. They've got to have things in place so that they can apply for federal grant money, state grant money, and things like that to reduce that cost. So the $30,000 might be a jumping point, and you go, holy crap, that's a lot of money. But if we can get, again, this is, like you said, you're probably looking at billions and infrastructure, hooking up homes to the infrastructure, things like that. When you're talking over the course of the next, I think the original plan they had at the current budget is like 900 years or something crazy like that. And by the time you get to the end of that time period, you'd be looking at obviously way more money. Now, if they can get grants, if they can get federal grant money, state grant money, things like that, that obviously reduces the bill, reduces the timeline, things like that. And I think that's the plan. I don't think they're just going to go, okay, well, here's the bill, and that's what you're stuck with.
Well, and I know I've had this conversation with city commissioners too, and they were mandated to have a plan by the state,
right?
And so it's a great conversation to have. Here's the funny thing: conversations are conversations. They're supposed to get everyone talking about it. They're supposed to engage.
Right.
We saw petitions. We saw all kinds of things happening. I love the fact that people were involved, but you got to get educated on what's happening too.
Sure.
Because all that effort that you're putting in for a petition based on something that's probably 10 to 20 years out, because they had to have a plan.
Right.
To me, I kind of lost, and I don't want to say I lost focus, because I didn't lose focus. I lost enthusiasm for getting upset.
Sure.
And I hate enthusiasm for getting upset. Think about that for a minute. I'm upset, so I'm going to get all excited. I'm going to get myself all worked up. I'm going to start doing all these things, but there's no traction for the project that isn't started yet.
Right.
These things are all, they have to be laid out. And when you go and you look at the budget side of things, and then you talk to a commissioner, and they are all five are easily communicated with via email, via phone calls, sit down meetings with any of them. You
Right.
can actually do that. They'll explain everything in detail. But you're right. I think people hear things, they get all emotional, and they forget. Let's get educated first. Let's
Sure.
figure out where we're going with this, because and I'm going to head right back down to Charlotte County again. They were mandating certain things down there, and they were putting water and sewer in, but they had matching funds, and it wasn't $30,000.
Right.
They got that price down, and I think they were in that $8,000 to $10,000 range. Now step back and think about it again, and say, well, if it's 8 to 10,000, it's $6,000 for a septic tank. It's another $2,000 for the leach field. So I mean, you're still talking $8,000, $8 to $10,000 for a septic tank, let alone the well, let alone everything you're having to do for your well to keep everything right. But nobody says you have to cap your well. You can keep your well for outside use.
Right.
And so you're still minimizing costs. And so I think when presented, and I have a problem with this too, because I think we sometimes get the word out, but we forget that our community doesn't have, other than a Facebook page, a radio station like ours that we're trying to get information out. We don't have a lot of avenues like news media that's out there talking about Northport. The only time they ever talk about Northport is something goes bad here.
Sure.
They really are never educating. So we've got a group of people that are educated, and Chuck English, he's got his topics. We've got other ones, Stephanie Gibson, great topics, great awareness of what she wants. Peter Bartolotta, great topics, great information, knowledge where he wants to go with things. I can go on and on and on. And Northport Forward is part of my show, and they give knowledge to citizens. And I think what we're doing here is trying to get people aware of what's happening around us, and really maybe mitigate some of the anxiousness of things that are happening, because a conversation about everybody getting well and septic, if you just happen to step back and realize we're a huge city, we don't have the capability of doing that right now if we wanted to.
Right. Right.
So everything we're talking about is years of planning, years of having a game plan, and we're talking about decades of game planning. We're not, and we got the first phase, and everybody went up in arms.
Right.
Sit back, relax, gather your core group. If you want to go at it, there are some things in life that I'm positive that we're going to get, whether we want it or not. Sewer and water, it's inevitable at some point that we're going to have it.
Right.
Notice I said at some point. I didn't say this year. I didn't say next year. I'm not even talking this decade.
Right.
It's out there, but I'm probably not going to be alive when Northport is half water and half sewer.
Right. Right.
So I'm not. I don't want people to get all anxious about it. I want people to realize that future plans happen. Look at Welland Park. It didn't happen overnight. They didn't get their water first. Things had to happen. We got creative with everything, but now they have their own water treatment plant, and it's brand new. And so they got their own police department substation. They got their own fire department now. There are things that are happening in Northport that really we're capitalizing on a lot of good stuff. I and this is just a slight bit off topic, but in a comparison to Charlotte County, if you're over in the in Rotunda West area, and you're looking at buying a house over there, we have in Northport very few areas that are actually being built right now that are outside of the range of a fire department. So when you go over there, your insurance, homeowner's insurance, has another built-in fee to it because you're outside of the 5-mile range of a fire department. We're talking about the planning. We're talking about all the things that go in. Public Works is a one department that you guys are planning the future. And I promise you, if we thought we were going to have to do something major with water and sewer right away, you guys would have more knowledge of it right now too, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we would have to. We'd have to know what's how, because it's obviously it's going to affect roadsides, it's going to affect swales, it's going to affect kind of pretty much everything we do. If they're having to install infrastructure, you're affecting solid waste collection. You are affecting the ability to maintain swales. You're affecting roads and traffic and everything like that. Heavy construction typically means damaging roads, denting the road, putting new potholes in the road.
Right.
So you would have to think if this is something that was going to happen next year, we would have some idea that it was coming for sure.
Yeah, and listen, we talk about all this stuff a lot. I have this conversation with our city commissioners, and they have to do certain things to prepare our city for growth years and decades out.
Exactly.
And a lot of them are like, I know they're all upset over this, but we have to have a plan. There's very few projects that you guys do that you don't have a game plan, right?
Correct.
And
it's an extensive process to even go through just the planning and then actually going through with the projects. And there are a lot of steps that have to take place.
I'm going to say this because, there's equipment that's purchased. There's, even I'm missing the word now. Our aquatic machine. What is it?
We have the amphibious. We have the Minzy.
So that right there. Let's talk about that. We got a couple minutes, and I just looked down at the clock, and I'm like, holy crap, we just took off for this whole 55 minutes. That machine was not a snap decision. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of study. A lot of work went into that, and think about this, and I keep it as simple as you can, but that machine went through a whole rigorous, do we really need it?
Exactly.
Before we actually got it. And now it's a valuable piece of equipment, but we're one of very few cities that has 80 miles of canals.
Exactly.
And yet we still had to put the machine through a gambit of, oh my God, moments to even validate getting it.
Right.
Imagine a septic system. Imagine water coming in. It's not overnight, folks. Just kind of sit back and relax. One of the biggest things we could do, though, is make sure our septic tanks are emptied. Every couple of years, every 4 years, really have them certified. If they need replaced, replace them. If you want people to stop talking about contamination, you might want to think about what you're not dumping every 4 years. And that's how I look at it. I'm like, if we really want to get our city back into check and get people educate them on a septic tank and what effects that has on the drinking water underneath us, which is the aquifer. So we've got some major issues if we don't take care of septic. We got trees now. We got a tree ordinance. Come on. If you got a tree ordinance, step up to the plate and let's put a septic tank ordinance in place and get these things checked every 4 years. I just think it's for the safety of the community as a whole, not individually, but as a whole. But we've got 1 minute left. Talk about the app a little bit.
Northport app. So again, if you have a bulk issues, bulk pickup, illegal dumping issues, someone in your neighborhood dumped a bunch of furniture on an undeveloped lot, things like that. Your drainage is not working as intended. If we missed your garbage collection, if you missed a sign, North Report app request, file a service request. We'll get out to it as soon as we're able.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all your time and have a great day. This is John Rawlings saying be safe on the way home, and we'll talk to you on Friday. Bye-bye now.
Bye, guys.
Great job.